Jesus Christ absolutely is indeed a white man. He is not a Jew. He is not an Arab. He is not an Asian. He's definitely not a black. He's definitely not a Spanish or any of these other things. He's a white man. And Revelation 1 verse 14 confirms it. Have a look at it here with me. His head, we're not to his hairs yet. His head was white like wool, white as snow. Okay, that's a white person. There is no Arab or black person or anybody that's got a white head. His hairs were white like wool and white as snow. Christ was 33 years old when he gave his life. He did not have elderly white person hair. What they're describing is he had bright blonde hair. Angel white, almost blonde hair. That is how they describe very, very bright blonde hair throughout the Bible, is that their hair was white like wool. Christ was only 33. He was not 400 years old and had white hair from the hundreds of years of elderliness. His hair was white at 33 years old because it was bright blonde. His hair was that color all through his life from birth to the age of 33 when he gave his sacrifice. Now, let's really hammer it home. And his eyes were as a flame of fire. You ever heard of a brown fire? You ever heard of a brown flame? Of course you haven't. Why not? Because there's no such thing. Okay? Jews and all other non-whites in the world all have dark brown beady eyes. Okay? Christ had eyes the color of a fiery flame, or the way it's written in this KJV version, a flame of fire. There's no such thing as dark brown fire. There's no such thing as any brown fire. Now, do you think Christ's color of his eyes would be the color of a lukewarm fire? A dull or not very hot fire? After all, he's going to be destroying the wicked with the brightness of his coming when he returns. Wouldn't you expect that Christ would have the hottest color of fire available for the color of his eyes? Well, that's indeed what he has. Blue is the hottest color of a fiery flame. It is the hottest color of flame. Blue is the hottest color. And you'll notice the next hottest color is white. So here we have white and blue. Blue eyes and a white man. That is exactly what the two hottest colors of fire are. Christ is going to destroy people with the brightness of his coming. Well, what would that be? That would be the whiteness of his coming. All right? It's not going to be the darkness of his skin color. It won't be the darkness of anything. There's no darkness in him. Christ said himself there's no darkness in him. So did God. There's going to be no darkness in heaven either, says both of them. And white people descend from Adam. Therefore, Christ descends from Adam. And in his earthly form he did. Adam, misspelled here, it's supposed to be spelled A-W-D-A-W-M, means to show blood in the face. It actually means white man who shows blood in the face, because only white people can show blood through the cheeks of the face. Only white people can blush. Only white people can turn rosy in the cheeks. Okay? And that's why anytime you see the word ruddy in the Bible, you will see, or even in ancient Hebrew writings, you will see that whiteness and ruddiness. I want you to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines down this, and you see where it says whiteness toward the end of the 5th line. Whiteness and ruddiness belong to the same description, belong to the description of youthful beauty, but they belong to the same descriptor. Okay? White and ruddiness. You will never see, and look right here on the line number 3, whiter than milk. Then look at line number 4, more ruddy than coral. White and ruddy are used together always in the Bible. Why? Because white people are the only ones who can turn ruddy. All right? And Adam, Hebrew word 119, is where we get the name Adam from Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, the parents of mankind. Adam meant a white man. It literally means a white man. He named Adam, he named Adam. The name Adam is the characteristic of his skin, of his face, that separates him from all the beasts of the world, from all the non-whites of the world. Okay? That characteristic was so important to God that he literally named him after the characteristic. Okay? So, God could not find a suitable mate for Adam, and God had already made all of the beasts male and female. So every male beast already had his own female mate. Adam was made special and separate, and so he did not have a mate. And so God tried to take females from all the different beasts and present them to him, and Adam named them, but none of them were worthy to be his mate because none of them looked like he did. So God put him to sleep, and as he caused him to sleep, he crafted a woman from a rib from his body. So the white woman is the only creature on the face of this earth that does not come from the earth. White men and beasts both come from the earth, from the dirt, from the dust of the ground. But a white woman actually comes from a white man, his body. So white women are the only creatures on earth that actually do not come directly from the earth. So that is why they are considered unique and special and are kept as white as possible all through scriptures. And whiteness of them was considered that they were treated with dignity and delicacy, and that they were worthy and pure and worthy of a good godly man to accept them, and all these things. So read verse 7 here. Her Nazarites were purer than snow. They were whiter than milk. Was Christ a Nazarite? Yes, he was. They were more ruddy in body than rubies. Their polishing was of sapphire. Now, this is a before and after comparison. If you read this whole chapter, you'll see that the style of this writing is that he's writing about before and after. So what you just read was before, okay, before God's punishment in verse 7. Nazarites were still whiter than milk and still more ruddy in body than rubies. Verse 8 is after God's punishment. Now their visage is blacker than a coal. Now they are not known in the streets. Now their skin cleaveth to their bones. It is withered. It has become like a stick. No one recognizes them anymore. And I'll give you an example of proof before we scroll on that is what is happening here. Read verse 4. The tongue of the sucking child cleaveth to the roof of his mouth for thirst. The young children ask for bread, and no man breaketh it unto them. Verse 5. They that did feed delicately, okay, did is past tense. Did feed delicately, that means they used to eat fine foods. They used to eat delicacies. They used to live it up. They used to have abundance of food. Now they are desolate in the streets. They that were brought up in scarlet embraced dunghills. People that were brought up in scarlet are brought up in worldliness. They're brought up with money. They're brought up with power and popularity, and worldliness is all. They're enthralled in worldliness because that worldliness bolsters their existence, and so they reciprocate by giving it their full attention. And so they're the ones who were brought up in worldliness. Scarlet means sin. It means worldliness. It means wickedness. Now they embrace dunghills. Okay, and this is talking about our people, by the way. Our Nazarites used to be a righteous and good people who follow God's way. As they fell away from God, as they started rejecting God and started living in wickedness, raising their children in wickedness, all of a sudden, one day, judgment came from God and punishment came from God. And that is what you're reading about here in this chapter. You're reading before God's punishment, after God's punishment. Before God's punishment, after God's punishment. So what you see here, that Nazarites turned blacker than coal, that their visage was blacker than a coal after God's judgment. It didn't mean God transformed them from white people to black people all right, out of punishment. That's not what it means. When white people are impoverished and downtrodden and filthy head to toe and starving, and their emotions are ruined and their spirit is ruined, and they are an emotional wreck, they are considered black, or blackness is gathered upon them. And their faces are filthy, their faces gather blackness. When their feet gather filth, their feet gather blackness. When their hands gather filth, their hands gather blackness. That's what it says all through the Bible about us whenever we are down and out, all the way, being punished, being destroyed, being ruined, if we're utterly filthy, if we're starving. And so if you read this whole chapter, you will see here that that's exactly what it's doing. It's giving before, after, before, after. And so, and it doesn't do it for the whole chapter, but that is what it's doing in these verses here. Now, black people will use only verse 8 and say, oh, Nazarites, their visage is blacker than coal. They'll ignore the fact that the context of the before and after punishment, and they'll very much ignore the verse 7 right above it that says that they are actually whiter than milk. So, Christ was a Nazarite. Nazarites were whiter than milk. Christ was an Israelite. Israelites are considered fair. All right, fair has always meant white. I will show you here. This is Webster's 1828. Before Webster's dictionary was corrupted in the 1850s by Freemasonry, which is Jewry. Read definition number 1. Clear, free from spots, free from a dark hue, white, as a fair skin, a fair complexion, hence white. Okay, that's what it's for. Now, other times people will use fair nowadays to mean pretty or clear complexion or all those things, but I can show you here, no problem, that it means white. It doesn't mean anything else. And so we'll go right here to makeup, and I'll show you in makeup that fair always means white. Now, they incorrectly have an Asian there, but that's all right, because Asians are called yellow fair or golden fair, and so sometimes they'll improperly use them, but fair actually means a white lady's version of fair skin color. And so, and the same thing with Snow White. Snow White wanted to know who was the whitest of them all, if she was indeed the whitest of them all, because she was white as snow, therefore she was the fairest. Fair has always meant white. It does not mean anything else. And when you look up ruddy, I showed in my last video, ruddy skin. If you put in ruddy skin, it'll say if you're normally pale, meaning white, your skin might have a ruddy tone from working outside. That means sunburnt, okay? Only white people can turn ruddy. So I just wanted to cover that in a quick little thing here. Real quick, I'll show you this too. Let's see here. I don't really have to go through all this, but the color black symbolizes suffering and death in the Bible. And we'll skip on and let you see some other parts here. The color black lacks brightness and hue. It does not reflect any light. Christ said there is no darkness in him. Christ said there is no darkness in heaven. Instead, black only absorbs light. The Bible tells us that God is light. Okay? Similarly, Adam was created in light. Why? Because he is created in the image of God. He wouldn't be created black or brown or any of these other things, because he would be born white like God. Okay? And so sin is blackness. All right? Blackness. Now, this lady is, mistakenly kind of wording that Adam was born in the blackness of sin, but he is actually created in light. So she got that part right. So it's true that we are born into sin, but it really is that that white people are born into sin, but it doesn't mean that we are colored the color of sin. We are born in God's image. And God is not black. There's no darkness in him. So read on here. Black can also represent the deceitful treatment of Job's friends. It can represent calamities, afflictions, God's judgment, adversity or suffering for one's sins. All the things I've already described that happened to us in the before and after part I was showing you. The color black can also signify punishment. It is eternal for disobeying God. So blackness is not black and darkness are not positive context or connotations in the Bible. Christ would not have anything to do with being dark, or there would be no darkness about him, no blackness about him. And so read right here. I have another little thing here for you to see. The Hebrew word here translated as fair is Yafeh. It is from a Hebrew word meaning to be bright. The context shows this word refers to the physical appearance, okay, meaning bright colored, white skinned, fair skin. And it is not here associated with mental aptitudes. In other words, it doesn't mean white or fair as in treating someone fairly, okay, like what we would use the word fair. There is every reason to believe that this word is to be understood according to its literal sense in regard to Sarah. She was not a dark-skinned person, but was a bright or light-skinned person. Since Abraham was half-brother to Sarah, he must also have been a fair-skinned person. Rebekah was also very fair to look upon. The word used in this instance, however, is a different word and may not of itself prove that Rebekah was a light-skinned person. However, there is every reason to believe it is to be taken in this sense. The other many texts which they have cited in this book show that Rebekah was from a family of fair-skinned people. David was ruddy and fair. White and ruddy. White and ruddy are always together. Okay? Now, this person miswrote on the very first line here and wrote that therefore they were Jews. Jews are not white and ruddy. But at least they did understand the part about white and ruddy and the fact that they are like that. Now, see how he had to backpedal a little bit and put some Jews are ruddy. No Jews are ruddy. That's the whole point there, buddy. That's the only thing he messed up on this understanding, is that they are not white and ruddy. They cannot sunburn. They cannot blush. Why? Because their father is Esau. Esau is not Israel. Esau was not renamed Israel. Esau is their father. Esau mated with two non-white beasts, and that is how the two different types of Jews were produced. They are mongrels. They have females who are non-white, who were beasts, who were not Adamic, who did not descend from Adam. And so, it doesn't go into detail about whether they were pure-blooded beasts or if they were mongrels that he mated with who could have been partially or white. There's no such thing as partially white. I'll explain that in another video. Where, picture a cold, tall glass of perfect white milk, okay? And how drinkable and delicious that is. Now, picture taking a eyedropper, one of those little liquid droppers, right? And picture that dropper being full of diarrhea. Now picture taking the dropper and dripping just one drop of diarrhea into that tall, cold glass of perfect white milk. You stir it all up. That one little drop in there, you can't even see that it's in there, can you? But you know it's there. Is it drinkable still? Absolutely not. So there's no such thing as half white or quarter white or partially white. Once a pure-blooded white person who descends from Adam and Eve mates with a non-white, mates with a beast, That is forbidden. That is an abomination, and it immediately any offspring who spawn from that abomination are mongrels that God says himself he will smite with death. Okay? So we do not have to concern ourselves with what mongrels say about us, think about us. They are the lowest on the hierarchy of existence of God's creation. They are even beneath, all mongrels are even beneath every pure-blooded beast, every pure-blooded non-white, every single pure-blooded black on this earth, every single pure-blooded Asian on this earth are above Arabs and Jews because they are mongrels, and all mulattoes, any white person who's ever mated with a non-white. Your children are the lowest of existence. They will be destroyed by God and by Jesus Christ. And they say though themselves, don't get mad at me, that's what God and Christ and Scripture say themselves, because they are walking examples of an abomination, a sinful act that was conducted long ago. And I'll show you again Jesus Christ in Masonic art. Now, I already explained in another video that Masonic art is a way they communicate truth among themselves while keeping the populace believing lies that they have created by their Jewish masters and promoted by their Jewish masters. Freemasonry is Jewry for non-Jews, to sell themselves, to sell their souls to Satan and follow satanic Jewry even though they are a non-Jew. That is what it's for. And you'll notice that they indoctrinate some blacks into it. They'll allow some blacks into it. They have the Boule and the other few things, the Blue Ridge and whatever lodges, but really it was to ruin white people. That's what it's really for. That's why you don't see a bunch of Asian Freemason stuff and a bunch of Arab Freemason stuff and a bunch of Spanish Freemason stuff, because they're not trying to ruin those people. But anytime they can convince white men to sell their souls, that is the ruining of white people. And they give them money and power and positions of prominence and all these things for doing so in this life. And they don't mind doing so because they know that they've already caused that white person to ruin themselves. So it's very important that you understand. And there they are, blonde-haired baby Jesus with blonde-haired Mary, with white men standing around. Freemasonry knows the truth. They keep it from you, but they do share it among themselves. And that is why, even though you should not pay attention to Freemasonry, it is garbage, it is satanic Jewry, it is still a quick and easy reference for discovering what they know to be true, which is that God and Christ and his chosen people are all white. White people are called people of light. That's where the whole gag of Pole, the meme of Pole, P-O-L, came from, is people of light. And even though they might not be Christians, they at least understand that we are people of light, that we are the people of light. So, Jesus Christ was a white man, okay? He was not a Jew, and he called Jews many terrible names. So he was not some love everyone, love your enemies hippie, like some of his words are taken out of context and taught to Christians. He was actually a quite rude person. If you just read everything he ever said that's written in the Bible, he was what people would consider cocky. He was what people would consider a smart aleck, because he would question people back. He would say, "Why don't you know this already? How do you not already know this?" And he would say things like that in his responses to people who were asking him honest questions. And here's one more thing I just want to show you in case you didn't get it in the last video. Well, actually, I didn't show it in the last video, so I need to show it in this one. But this is a quote from, now this is not the Jewish Almanac. This is a book written about the Jewish Almanac. 1980 and 1984 Jewish Almanacs both show on paragraph or on page 3, paragraph 1, line 1, this is the quote. Strictly speaking, it is incorrect to call an ancient Israelite a Jew, or to call a contemporary, that means modern day, Jew, an Israelite or a Hebrew. Meanwhile, what do they tell you to call them all the time? They call themselves Israelis and all this. They are not Israel whatsoever. Jews descend from Esau. They can never, ever, ever be their uncle's sons. Never, never, never. You can never be your uncle's sons. Esau mated with two beasts. He created the two types of Jews that exist today. The Edomites are what they're called in the Bible. They're also called Edom in the Bible. They're also called Pharisees, scribes, and the elders, which definitely is a self-appointed name they made up for themselves, no doubt. And they started impostoring as white people 700 years before Christ was born. And no, I should say they started studying white people 700 years before Christ was born in Babylon, when the second portion of our tribes were conquered by Babylon. They were brought back to Babylon. The tribe of Judah was, and they had some of the tribe of Levi with them, and they had some of the tribe of I'm having a brain fart. But the bottom line is, mostly Judah was brought to Babylon because the kingdom of Judah was what was conquered by Babylon. The northern 10 tribes, the bulk of them, had already been conquered by Assyria 70 years before and taken away to Assyria. They were living up to the north in Assyria. Babylon came along and conquered Judah and took the Judahites and a small handful of Levites and the other group. That's so funny that any other time I'd be able to rattle off the third tribe that was hanging out among them. But for whatever reason, when I'm trying to do these rants, I have small little brain farts here and there, and I can't come up with certain things sometimes to say that I'm trying to give you for an answer. Sorry about that. Anyway, the bottom line is, Judahites were captured by Babylon, and they were brought to Babylon 700 years before Christ. Immediately, once they got to Babylon, Jews started studying them. The Edomites started feverishly studying white people, Israel. And 200 years later, they were confident enough in their studies that they started impostoring as Israelites. And then they started trying to infiltrate our spiritual law structure that we had. We had our own laws because Augustus allowed us to rule over ourselves as far as our own spiritual laws, and even people before him. So I shouldn't be referencing him. I should be referencing a ruler even before him. But they allowed us to govern ourselves as far as our religion was concerned under Rome. And so because of that, we had our own religious law makers and law enforcers, like our own spiritual police. And by 500 years before Christ, 200 years after they had started studying us, they started infiltrating us. It took them 200 years of infiltrating us, so 400 years total, which is 300 years before Christ's life. They had started taking positions. They had duped us into allowing them to have positions of spiritual leadership over our people. So by the Christ's time on earth as a human, as part of mankind, descended from Adam's perfect blood seed line, they had already been in charge over Israelites, over white people, as the law enforcers for 300 years. So they had already been the bosses over white people for 300 years before Christ came along as being born a man. And all of Christ's life, he called them imposters. You can find in your Bible, if you do a word search, he called them imposters more than once. He also called them dogs. He called them wolves. He called them vipers. He called them snakes. He called them hypocrites. He called them liars. He called them thieves. And he called them children of the serpent. He also called them money changers, the elders, the Pharisees, and the scribes. So, anytime you see any of those words that I just listed, written in the Bible, They are talking about the actual Jews. And anytime you see the word Jews in the Bible, you can replace that word with Israelites, meaning white people. Okay? And so I don't want to go too much deeper into it because I wanted to stick with the fact that Christ himself was a white man. Here's one more thing for you to know about. Not only does the Talmud declare that Christ is burning or boiling up to his armpits in excrement or semen, which depending on which version you read, for claiming that he was the Son of God, the Jews also have another blasphemous story about God, and that's called the Toledat Yeshu, and they call him a bastard who was a son of a menstruant. And that is a woman who was shameful, who would actually have sex during her period. Is called a menstruant woman. That was considered an insult to call a woman a menstruant. And they also criticize her or make up stories of her saying she's a whore, that she would have sex with just whoever whenever she was horny. And so this is where you get the band name Pantera from, by the way, because they declare that a Roman soldier is who slept with her, that she wasn't a virgin at all, and that she got pregnant by a Roman soldier that they believe to have the last name of Pandera, or Pantera, if you will, and that's where the band Pantera, of course, they're not going to ever admit that, but that's where they get their name from. And a lot of bands do that. They get their names from things in history, either to mock Christ or to embrace some other type of history, like the band Danzig. You know, it's all about the location Danzig that was about World War II. And of course, they'll never admit those things, or maybe they will. Sometimes they will, sometimes they won't. But the bottom line is this is the Jewish version of Jesus. And of course, if Christ was a Jew, all these people talking and threatening to take down statues of Jesus, Jews would call it anti-Semitic, right? And of course, Jews are not Semites, but they have commandeered the term anti-Semitic or Semitic, that they're Semitic people, even though they're not. And so, even though they're imposters, people believe they're the Semites, and so they get to use that weapon of saying anti-Semitic to anything that they disagree with. But really, if you're anti-Semitic, that means you're anti-white. So, just wanted to show you here real quick that there is no darkness in God, no darkness in Christ, and that blackness is always a negative context when it's spoke of in the Bible. There's never a positive version of blackness or darkness. It's always a negative thing. Here is darkness, and you'll see once you get past creation, which was just by default darkness because there was no light in it, that everything else beyond it is a negative connotation and negative context. So you wouldn't want any of that associated with Christ. Christ would have nothing to do with darkness or any of those things. And a quick reminder that white, there are 70 instances of it in the Bible. 70 is a holy number ordained by God. And so I think I've covered enough here. I don't really want to go too much deeper into this because I want to keep this video as short and to the point as I could. Christ was a white man, and that is why Black Lives Matter and all these people are inclined to take down their statues. All of this is a war against white people. Jesus Christ white people are the followers of Jesus Christ because Jesus Christ was white. He is our Lord and Savior, and he did not come here to save anyone except for the lost white people, the lost children of the house of Israel. That's what he said out of his own mouth. You can argue with him all you want. No need to argue with me. That's what he said himself. I came not. That means he didn't come for. But that means except for the lost children of the house of Israel. That's white people. So Christ said himself, it's all he came here for. He also said out of his own mouth, those who are not sick are in no need of a physician. Okay, therefore, he literally is saying that he's only there for the people who are sickly, white people in the head, white people who are messed up in the head, the football nog worshiping fan, the idiot white guy that's cheering on his daughter to be a cheerleader and cheer on blacks at high school, the wigger. Okay, that's who Christ came for. And before I go, I just wanted to show you that Spartans were blonde. So have a read of that if you want. A lot of Spartans, in fact, almost all of them were blonde, even though they're always depicted as otherwise in movies and whatnot. So just another little fun thing there for you. And yeah, Christ was a blonde-haired, blue-eyed man, which I already showed you in Revelation 1:14. And so that's all you need to know. Revelation 1:14. Anytime any Jew or black supposed or one of those Afrocentric morons comes to you, just remind them that fair all through Scripture means white, that Christ's eyes were the color of the hottest flame there is, which is blue, and that brown doesn't even exist as a color, that Adam, the parents of mankind who only ever produced white babies exactly as all white couples only produce, and they are the parents of mankind. Adam means to show blood in the face. Only white people can show blood in the face. Only white people can blush. And Nazarites, Christ was a Nazarite, verse 7 here in Lamentations chapter 4. Nazarites are whiter than milk. Okay, so I think I've covered that enough for you to understand, and I will show you more in another thing about white Ethiopians. I do have that coming. It's on the way. I just had a few more things to put together to show you. Okay, take care.